we often go for lunch, and Ray used to teach MBA students at Emory College. It was his dream job. Now, another thing you need to know about Ray, he's Irish, which means he loves to tell stories, and he's also a little bit cheeky. So one of my favorite stories that he always tells me is about his time teaching his MBA students at Emory, where he would present them a Lego house. And that's the story that I want us to start with today. Now remember, Ray is a little cheeky, keep that in mind. So Ray would present his students with a Lego house. He would have 3 different teams, and they would get a set of blocks, and he'd go, okay, build your house, follow the instructions and build your house. And the students would set off, and out of the 3 teams, 1 team would finish in about 5 minutes, while the other 2 teams would be sitting there struggling and frustrated. So he would let them finish out, and then they'd all sit down together and he'd go, okay, let's reflect on our instructions. Let's reflect on this whole practice. And that's when all of the teams realized that they did not have the same instructions. Now, Team A was given written instructions. So they were given a bag of Lego blocks and really detailed written instructions saying, take piece A and connect to hole 2 on piece B, and so on. So that team had been stuck reading these written instructions. Team B had been given an instruction book, but this one had no writing. It only had pictures of the blocks and no colors. So they also knew what the bigger picture was, kind of, but weren't really given any details on how to follow it. Now, Team C was given a book that had written instruction, pictures, colors, the whole picture. Now, I bet you could probably guess which team finished the fastest here. Yeah? The reason I'm telling you a story about Legos is I find that this is one of the best metaphors possible when it comes to understanding how it works when you're integrating AI within a team, when you're creating that human-AI partnership. What do I mean? Well, let's start, hopefully here. There's a range to this clicker, and I keep walking out of it. So let's look at the big picture. We have the house. You're building your AI practice. What does this mean? This can be, do you have teams? Are you building out an AI team within your company that is going to be developing AI-based solutions, either internal or external? This also can mean that you are becoming AI-enabled. You are adopting AI solutions. You're looking external to external providers, third-party providers, and integrating these AI services within your teams. When it comes to building out an AI practice, it doesn't matter if you are developing or adopting. There are key factors that create a successful AI house. So let's talk about Team A. When we had the written instructions, but no pictures. This is a blocker that I see companies often falling into. It's when you're offering process, but no picture. You're forgetting about the people in your practice. So imagine that you have your team, and this team is looking at onboarding a new AI tool to help increase their productivity. Now, they have the instruction manual, they have all the teeny details, but they have no idea what the bigger picture is. They don't know what they're working towards, nor do they even have the skill set. They've been given the process, they know what buttons to click, but they don't really know what they're doing. They don't have the knowledge base, they don't have the skill set, they don't have any of that built underneath. This is what it means when you offer process but no picture. You're forgetting that at the end of the day, it's people that are going to be interfacing with these systems. You need that picture. What you need is to equip your people. So what do I mean when I'm talking about equipping your people? This is something called the people pillar. And what you're doing is you're asking yourself who is building or using AI in this context. Now, there are 3 elements to successful people pillar. And this is educate, motivate, and communicate. What do I mean by this? Educate means that you are ensuring your people have the skill sets and knowledge necessary to actually being able to engage with these solutions. AI is a new tool. There is high AI literacy, there's low AI literacy. You are going to have mixed teams. People from non-STEM backgrounds tend to be a little bit more hesitant and nervous about engaging with these tools, versus upper management, again, hesitant and nervous about engaging with these tools. There will be different adoption levels. It's your job to ensure that the education exists to support your teams in engaging with AI. It's a new skill set that they're learning. So once they have the skill set, then they need the motivation. And this actually means looking at your KPIs, your objectives. You will have to adjust. Looking at what it means to actually encourage people to engage with these tools. Then finally, our people are educated, they're motivated, but are they talking about it? And this one is especially important if you're looking to scale within a larger company. Are your teams talking about it? I can't tell you how many teams I run across where they're using an AI solution, and right next door, there is another team using a completely different AI solution, but trying to serve the same purpose. So when you're looking at scaling AI within your company, you need to consolidate, at least at some point, centralize communications, knowing what team's working on what, who's using what system, and where are the redundancies that we can actually eliminate, because it is very easy to sink time and resources into AI very fast. We don't want to do that. We want one solution that's going to be able to serve multiple teams, for example. You're never going to find that if you're not communicating. So, to ensure that you are not offering process without practice, process without the actual bigger picture and skill sets, you're looking at building out a people pillar, where you're educating, motivating, and communicating. Now, the other interesting thing here is this is also a layer that you introduce your values into. So I know in my introduction, I talked about me being an ethicist. What that means, what an AI ethicist does, is align our AI practices and our development with our values. So when I work with a client, I ask them, what are your values? What's the company mission? What are the values of the country that you're operating within the market? What are the values of your industry? We take that value set and we start running it through these pillars. So let's say fairness is an important value to your company, to your industry. We're going to run it through this people pillar. Are your people educated about what fairness means in the context of your specific application, industry, service? There are different definitions of what it means to be fair. You need to ensure that people are educated on that. Are they motivated to actually implement fairness controls? Fairness controls usually come in the form of bias mitigation, bias checkers. Are your people actually motivated to take the time to check for unwanted biases? And communicate. Are they talking with each other about it? I once went into a company, it's a Fortune 100 bank, they had 3 data science teams. Every single data science team was working on a different definition of fairness. And it was causing clashes across the company, when all they needed to do was actually communicate, hey, what does fairness mean to you? Something that simple. You can do this for any of your values. You run them through. These are not only the points of change management on your people layer within your AI human practice, these are also the impact points where you start aligning your AI practices with the company mission, with your market values, with those driving competitive edges. So this is people. We're all still awake? All still good? Good. Now, let's talk about the next team. Remember, we're talking about Lego houses. So looking at this, we had Team A that was given instructions but no pictures. They were given process without an understanding of how to reach it. Team B, however, was given a picture with no process. They were given, hey, this is where we're headed, this is what we want to do, but no idea how to actually carry that out, how to execute it. What I call this is when you forget about the processes. AI is not a magic wand. It's not something that you are, let's say, struggling in a certain department. You're going to put in an AI solution and everything's going to be great. No. You actually need to have the governance and processes set up, the operational processes, so that people know what they're doing. Sometimes this is as simple as mapping a workflow. You're developing AI projects, all right? Who talks to who? At what point in time? When do we go from talking with the project manager to the data scientists? What's that handoff look like? It's kind of boring, but really important. There's a lot of confusion that can happen without that process. So let's talk about the process pillar. We talked about people. Let's look at process. So you've answered the question of who is building or using AI. Now we're asking the question of how is that AI being built or used? And here, we're looking at the pillars of intent, implement, and instrument. They all start with I, so they stick in your head. I just couldn't figure out the same letter to do for the people pillar. So intent. This is when you establish a clear and consistent strategic direction. These are your policies. Something as simple as an AI policy, or something as simple as a policy on when and when not you can use and engage with ChatGPT or other large language models. If you're not giving direction, you're creating confusion. Let's say that you work in an industry or within a company with sensitive data. You cannot input that into a public domain large language model. But if your team doesn't know that, if they don't know when and what kind of information they can engage with something like ChatGPT on, they are either going to mess things up or they're going to freeze and get confused. It's creating that intention. You're setting your intention. Where are we going? These are your policies. Now, implement, what you're doing is creating a comprehensive and standard course of action. These are your frameworks. Should have told you, this kind of stuff's kind of boring. It's not very fancy. There's not a lot of secrets here. You got your policies, and then you got your frameworks that are implementing those policies. You're implementing that intention that you've set. Now, these frameworks can look quite different. You'll have ones such as a fairness framework for your data science team, for example. So they know when and where they're checking for different types of biases. They know the metrics that they're trying to reach. Or a framework could be a workflow design, like I was talking about before. Who gets handed what at what point in time? All of these are different frameworks. There are open access frameworks, such as OECD and the United Nations and NATO. A lot of these larger organizations will create open access frameworks that you can utilize for AI governance, or you can customize them. The important thing is you are creating an implementation standard. Without that standard, you're wasting time and resources. You're sinking time and resources into constantly repeating the same work over and over again. Now, once you have your intention and your implementation set, we go to instrument. And this is where you get to standardize your practices. This is where you start to hit scale. And what instrument means is the supporting tooling that helps you scale your AI solutions. So these are your data dashboards. These are your AI governance platforms. This is a lot of information that needs to be handled, but there's patterns to it. And this is where we find the instruments to help us scale. So when we're talking about ensuring that we have practice to complement that bigger picture, our people have the skill sets, they're motivated, they're communicating, they know what to do in terms of the end goal of where they're headed with AI. Then we have the process pillar, intent, implement, and instrument. This is how they're actually going to be able to engage with AI. We're setting standards there. And we can do the exact same thing as we did before in terms of ethics. Let's use fairness again. So you already heard me talking about it. If we're talking about fairness, if that is important to your company, then we have a fairness policy. I've seen a company do it before where they couldn't make a decision between equal outcome or equal opportunity, so they defined fairness as equal quality of service. And that became the guiding policy for the entire company. And every single department pointed back towards that North Star. They knew the intention of what they were doing when it came to fairness. This was in the banking industry, so also incredibly important to have that. So you set your policy. Then to complement that policy on fairness, we go to having an implementation, having a framework. In this case, I'll use that same company as an example. We had our fairness definition, our intention, our policy, and then we actually created a workflow of when and where the different bias checks were happening within the data scientist workflow. Very specific, we got detailed there. But that's an example. Instrument, we actually ended up using a software that helped test data as it was coming in. So once we had clean data ingested, we had a software platform that was helping identify potential biases in real time before we were using it to train models. Great, we set it for fairness. We literally just ran fairness through all three of these. So just as we did with the people pillar, the process pillar works exactly the same. Not only are these the 3 points in time, the 3 points that create that change management necessary to become AI-enabled, these are also the 3 impact points that you translate those values into action, that you bring AI into an alignment. So let's go to the last team. Because remember, we're still talking about Legos here, not AI. So the holistic AI package, this is where we're bringing together both picture and process. This is when our people are taken care of. This is when our process is taken care of. We create this holistic picture. But we are still actually missing a pillar. The 3 pillars to AI success, and I'm going to say as well, aligned AI success, aligned with your values, aligned with your company mission, objectives, and direction, is a slow slide transition. It's people, process, and then technology. I started with the people and process, and I focused on these because these are the 2 pillars that 9 times out of 10 a company forgets, and are the primary blockers to any type of AI enablement beyond narrow use cases. So I don't know if you're familiar, there was a Gartner report that came out in 2019 that showed an AI maturity model, 5 different phases. And it was showing that companies were at about phase 2, which meant there were use cases, there were small teams using AI here or there to try and start to drive some preliminary business value, and that most companies were sitting at about phase 2 of adoption, phase 2 of AI maturity. Flash forward to 2025, Gartner ran the same report and found that companies were stuck at phase 2 with use cases, small, narrow use cases, not really being able to scale beyond a simple use case. The blocker was not AI. It was not technology. The blocker was the lack of attention given to people and process. That people and process is so incredibly important. I'm just going to keep nailing this in over and over again. I cannot stress it enough. It's people and process. But I know that technology is still important, so don't worry. Let's go through the technology pillar real quick as well, so you have that in your mind. Now, when I'm talking about the technology pillar, though, when we're asking what AI is being built or used, the 3 elements that I'm looking for here have to do with infrastructure, not model architecture, not use case design, quite literally infrastructure that enables you to successfully engage with AI solutions. And these 3 pillars are data, document, and domain. Data. I think that one's pretty self-explanatory, but we'll go into it. You want to ensure that you're aligning that data lifecycle with your principles and with your governance processes. You can't have AI without data. So if you're a company looking to engage with AI for the first time and you realize that your data is a mess, you can't figure out where things are in SharePoint versus OneDrive versus who knows what other folders you have, it's going to be incredibly difficult to actually engage with any AI tool meaningfully. You need to have that standardization within your data lifecycle. Once you've got your data in order, we move on to document. And document is more looking at creating visibility into what you're doing. And I know this really doesn't have anything to do with the technology, but the documentation of when and where and what models are deployed across your company, who's been involved in the development of those models, or just even who's using different AI tools. What is an approved or not approved AI tool, for example? You need to have that documentation. It creates visibility. You can also go a layer in deeper. You create documentation specifically on model development. What key decisions are being made when and where? Who was involved in those decisions? There are some amazing AI platforms, AI governance platforms out there that help with that documentation process. This is also a favorite one of our data scientists and computer engineers and developers to skip. It's incredibly difficult to go back and fix a bug if you don't know who did it in the first place or where it is. You need that documentation. Without it, you're not going to be able to scale. And then finally, the last one has absolutely nothing to do with the technology and comes back to the human. This is a theme. We'll come back around to that. But domain. What domain means is creating feedback loops. So you're iterating as you refine models. You're iterating as you're refining your practices. You have to create feedback loops with the end user. If you have a team that's developing an AI solution, or even a procurement team that's bringing in an AI solution, and they're failing to gather that feedback from the end users, you're going to find that you come back 6 months later and no one's using the AI. You're still spending on it, but no one's using it. You need that domain feedback, the domain of where the AI system is deployed. If you're external facing, if you're providing AI solutions, you need domain feedback in terms of how your end users are engaging with it. Or let's say you're developing an AI solution for healthcare, for nurse clinicians. You need the domain feedback from those nurse clinicians. You need that human feedback. So on the technology pillar, I know it says technology, but it has to do with the infrastructure you need established. And that infrastructure for AI success comes down to data, document, and domain. Now, I'm not going to run you guys through fairness again, but we can do the exact same thing. We can sit here and go, all right, fairness practices in our data lifecycle, we're documenting what kind of biases we're mitigating, and we're getting feedback from our users to ensure that we do have a balanced system, both in terms of race and gender and so on, et cetera. So, technology pillar, we've built our 3. Let's look at this as a full picture, as a full Lego house. The 3 pillars to AI success, we start with our people, and in people, we're looking at educate, motivate, and communicate. We can run our values through these. This is the point of change, the change management elements that we need in order to support our people. We've got our process, which is intent, implement, and instrument. Operationally, we have our practices in place, we have our processes, and technology. We've got data, document, and domain. We have our 3 elements there. This, drum roll, there we go, last slide transition on that one. This is what it means to holistically engage with AI. And I'm going to stress it again. Most companies forget the first 2 and focus only on the data and hopefully sometimes the document and technology. And that is what is holding back that human-AI partnership. As you heard me talking through this, most of these elements focus on the human at the end of the day. What is the person doing? How is the person engaging and developing and adopting AI? This is your roadmap, your template to that human-AI partnership, equipping your company to not only be able to engage, but scale AI. Now I have a question for you all. Who here is familiar with the term responsible AI? Raise your hand. Got pretty much the whole room. Well, what we just went through was responsible AI. Responsible AI is just good business practice. None of that sounded idealistic or preachy or we need to follow our values. We talked about aligning with our values because it keeps us pointed in the right direction. All of that was responsible AI. And as a responsible AI practitioner, my job nowadays, I partner with the new chiefs and VPs of AI to build out that map, to build out the human side. There's so much that needs to happen on the technological side, yet we continuously forget at the end of the day, it's always a human story. Which is why I started with the story about Ray. AI is always a human story. It's always going to come back to the humans. And I cannot stress that enough. When you're adopting, developing, engaging, thinking about AI, always go one step further and go, okay, what's going on with the human here? How is the end user interacting? How is my team actually being equipped and supported? What happens at the end of the day to the human? And that, I think, is the biggest key to success in AI. So, what now? Well, I'm going to leave you with 3 takeaways here, so they stick in your mind. First, successful AI encompasses people, process, and technology. People and process. I know I keep repeating that, but I really want it to stick, so people and process, and then technology. Second, responsible AI is just good business practice. If you're looking at engaging in AI, you are engaging in responsible AI. You either have risky AI or you have responsible AI. There is no in between. Responsible AI means that you are covering those pillars, that you are engaging in the change management necessary to actually successfully be able to engage and adopt AI, to enable AI, whether that's in services or within your own company. If you're not engaging any of those practices, or you're saying, we'll cover that later, you are introducing unnecessary risk and wasted time and resources into your company. It's as simple as that. And finally, the last piece, AI is always a human story. So if you walk away from nothing else in this talk, it's these 3 pieces I want you to remember. People, process, technology, responsible AI is good business practice, and we're always talking about the human at the end of the day. So thank you all for your attention. I can't remember if I am, with a very slow side transition. Interesting. Technology always surprises me. I can't remember if I have time for questions, but if you want to reach out to me, this is the best way to do it. Sorry, it's always fun having fun transitions. That should say my website down there. It's just my name. But feel free to reach out to me. That's a link to my newsletter where I talk about this human AI alignment. This is my book, which goes over those processes, those pillars in detail. And if you reach out to me on LinkedIn, I do eventually respond. Sometimes it might take me a little bit. So if you really want to talk to me, go through the contact form on my website. Thank you all.